So forgive me for that, guys. Thank you for your patience. I'm usually not this much of a technical Luddite. But in terms of career overview, so right now I'm based in London, England. I am the head of a group that was newly developed called the International Development Group for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Also, forgive me for my cold. About 4 years ago when Shad Khan bought the Jaguars, one of the things that we really focused on was trying to grow local revenue, and that continues to be the cornerstone of what drives our business, is trying to really drive local revenue. As part of that drive, we took a game over from Jacksonville, took one of our home games over from Jacksonville to London. So we play one of our home games in London every year. And in the course of that time, in the course of sort of deepening our relationship with the market here in London, Shad also bought Fulham Football Club, which is now a championship level team. It was a Premier League team back in the day, but back when we bought it, but is now a championship team that is trying to get back into the Premier League. And so my job right now is to come over here and try to figure out what the synergies are as between Jacksonville and Fulham, and also try to grow our local revenue beyond just ticket revenue from the game. So I'm here to try to grow the game. I'm here to try to grow our sponsorship business, and I'm trying to the best way possible to drive synergies between Fulham and in Jacksonville. Before I got here to London, I was the head of a group called Fan Engagement for 4 years in Jacksonville. I initially started off as sort of really driving the driveway to driveway experience. So from the time you left your home to the time you arrived at the stadium and came back, everything that you touched, I was responsible for. My group was responsible for. That morphed into overseeing our marketing group, and then my title. So initially I was there as a fan experience person. I came over, and then I morphed into fan engagement. That meant overseeing a fairly significant renovation to Everbank Field, $63 million renovation to Everbank Field that involved the installation of 2 swimming pools that most people sort of now seem to associate with Everbank Field, and also the 2 world's largest video boards. I was sort of in charge of overseeing that execution, and we were able to really drive the fan experience. We were actually rated the #1 fan experience in all the NFL by our fans last year, and it was obviously for a team that I think we had 3 wins last year. It was a pretty decent accomplishment, I'd like to think. Before I got to Jacksonville, I was head of business planning and general counsel to New Meadowlands Stadium Company, which was the operating group that ran MetLife Stadium, which is where the Jets and the Giants play. The Jets and the Giants formed a 50-50 venture to own and operate the stadium, and they needed a group to basically run the stadium and sell all the sponsorships, etc. So I was, like I said, I was part of the group that ran that enterprise. Before there, I was with Major League Baseball, and then prior to that, was in graduate school. So at Northwestern, I got a JD and MBA, and from there, I had some sort of odd jobs before that with the NFL. But that's sort of a very long-winded overview, but probably give some color to where and why I'm here. The advice for breaking into the industry is an interesting question. It's one that is a tough one because on the one hand, it's a lot of luck, which is sort of good and bad. On the one hand, that means that there's really I don't think there's one right way of doing it. On the other hand, it's a function of things that tend not to be in a lot of people's control, which can be a little disconcerting. I think that what often happens when you go to schools, like Cornell and schools of that ilk, there tends to be a view sometimes from some people. This is not a generally held view, but certainly there are those who do it. I think that somehow or another I didn't pay this much to do this kind of job, or my parents didn't take out this level of loans to do this kind of job. Sadly, in the NFL or in sports as a general proposition, paying your dues is a significant element of sort of the pedagogy and the culture of what it means to work in sports. And so you end up really having to kind of work from the bottom up. And, I think that there are really two key learnings that I've developed over my time. You guys you can see the grays. So I've been doing this for a while. One is to really make sure that you don't see any job as beneath you. Even when I took this job here in London, I'm sort of, like I said, I'm long in the tooth. But the parting bit of advice my boss gave me, I report to a guy by the name of Mark Lamping, who's the president of the Jaguars. The parting bit of advice he gave me was, you don't need to serve the shrimp, but there are going to be days where you need to make sure that the shrimp is cooked and tastes okay. So even today, I have to be the taster at sometimes, and we all have to be the taster and the cooker at some point in our careers. And you can't look at any job as too menial, because as soon as you do, there are 15 other people who are more than happy to take that entree. The other thing I would make sure, and this is true sort of at all levels, whether you're trying to break in at the junior most levels or even a little bit more senior, is to try to think of sports in sort of the most broad terms as you can. So, there are companies like, PepsiCo that have sports divisions. There are companies like Goldman Sachs or Chase or whatever it is that have divisions that look at sports in very different ways than that consumer product goods companies do. There's obviously leagues, there are teams, there's equipment companies, there's a huge breadth of what it means to quote unquote work in sports. And, that is comforting in some ways, because there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity to get your hands dirty, particularly early on in your career. And so if you're working for a minor league baseball team, you're working for a minor league hockey team, or whatever the case may be, you're wearing a lot of different hats. You're in remote areas. You're sometimes the mascot. You're sometimes the ticket seller. Sometimes you're the hot dog vendor. But I tell you, all of those things give you credibility down the road. And, you sort of have to, it's like the old sort of sports analogy of stacking them up, stacking the wins, stacking the experiences up. It's very much like that. And, when you go into a room and you start talking about sales experience, or when you go into a room and start talking about, this is what I think you should do, you never want to be in a position to ask or to be asked, well, how the heck do you know what you're talking about? When you have done things, that's instant credibility. And it's credibility with people as you progress in your career where you can relate to them. So if you have been at a stage where you're able to say, I've done this, that's generally pretty valuable. So we're looking right now at, I would say, 5 major initiatives. I'm hopeful within the next week we're going to be prepared to announce one. One of the things that we have, I think, not done a particularly good job of, just because we haven't been ready to, not because of the shortcomings of anybody who's worked here in the past, but we haven't done a particularly good job of developing things to sell and developing initiatives here that sponsors, let's say, can attach, to which the sponsors can attach their name. So, the one of the things that we've been looking to do is really develop the game and develop a fulsome kind of approach to how people participate and engage with football. So what I've developed and what we've developed here over the last few months is a program where we're looking at sort of top flight athletes down to the elementary school and developing a package of participation for each of them. So in the next week or so, we hope to be able to announce the signing of a pretty significant athlete here who's quitting his sport in England to pursue a career in the NFL. And I'm hopeful that it is with the Jaguars that he chooses. So that's going to make a heck of a splash. In May, we're likely to conduct a tryout for NFL talent to see if there's anybody who has just raw NFL, so raw talent that we can develop. And so that sort of and that would be for like 25, 50 people. That sort of takes on the high end elite athlete world. After that, we're looking to do a big academy. So like a 3-day all-inclusive academy to help start developing the sport. There are about 80 colleges here that play football, and those roster sizes are somewhere between 40 and 50 players. So there's a significant number of people who play American football here, much bigger than you would sort of intuit just by thinking about it. So we're looking to elevate that skill level and elevate that development. So we'll send some players and coaches over here to engage in the academy. That's never been done before. No team has ever done that. And then we'll have a 4th day in the academy, which is just dedicated to teaching coaches how to coach. So that's that's a pretty significant sort of milestone. We'll be following up that with a 3-nation, so Scotland, Wales, and England 7-on-7 tournament, where we hope to have 500-600 participants. That will end in the final, sort of round robin style. That'll end in the final in London. And then last week we launched a after school program for sort of high school to middle school age kids called Jag Tag, which is a modified football program, an after school program for underprivileged kids who want to learn how to play American football. So we're sort of taking the approach of elite down to high school kids, approach of introducing the game, trying to develop it, and trying to draw sort of avidity in the sport, and then hopefully draw Jaguars fans out of that. If we can have somewhere between 7 of every 10 new Jaguars NFL fans be Jaguars fans, hopefully we're onto something. On the question of whether it'll be a full-time team, there may be someday. I think there probably is. It's too early now. I don't think the market is ripe enough for an NFL team yet. But if you look at the sales figures, we had 3 games. We sold 2 of those games out in 3 days, and there are only about 5,000 tickets left for our game, and that's they sell out. This is 3 times over at 86,000 capacity, incidentally, at 1.5 times the average ticket price in Jacksonville for our game. And so it's not a cheap ticket here. So there is definitely interest. There are about 3 to 4 million self-identified avid NFL fans here. So the numbers are not insignificant. I think the trajectory has been, really, really strong upward growth for the game. I think it has a very bright future. But it's also, we have to be very mindful of the fact that it's a very foreign game to this culture. Contact sports, as a general matter, are not really big. Obviously, rugby's big here, but generally speaking, it's an established niche sport. Everything's sort of niche after soccer here, after football here. But it is a huge sport, rugby. But it's certainly contact sports, as a general matter, are just not part of the culture here. Plus, it's sort of a weird looking sport in a lot of ways, right? Like the idea of this sort of stop and start, the idea of it taking 3 hours, that's completely foreign to any of the sports here. They all have running clocks in most of the sports here. The razzmatazz is pretty interesting to people, but they tend to come for the razzmatazz just because it's such a foreign concept. They don't really understand the game as they're watching it. So hopefully the signing of this player will help educate people, the one that I mentioned earlier, and also hopefully the idea that we can just sort of move beyond the novelty of the game, which I think we have begun to. But if we can move beyond the novelty of the game to it being something that people actually understand the strategy, then I think we might be onto something. I don't know. I think there's probably something to that. I think that, somebody who can't figure out how to unmute their computer may not be in the best position to start opining on the future of OTT. But I think there certainly is. If you look at what Netflix has done, and look at what Apple TV has done, and look at the sort of real migration that has taken place, the astronomical migration in the last, exponential migration in the last even year, for people cutting the cord. I think that is a significant sea change in how people view television and how people consume media. You just look at ESPN's numbers, and you look at the subscriber drop off from cable. In a lot of ways, that is very disconcerting for people like me, who we make our living in a lot of ways because of the TV deals that are out there. And that's true of our players. The whole ecosystem is based on TV. So I think in a lot of ways we've got to be able to change. We've got to be able to be nimble with where we are from a strategy perspective, and be able to embrace these things in a really interesting way. If you look at the numbers, I think they're very promising. We had streams and unique visits from all over the world. If you look at the game that we put on with Buffalo, was probably a lot closer than it should have been, but it certainly proved to be some pretty interesting viewing. And I think it's a really, really good way, particularly if you marry that with the unique time slot that we were able to get for our game. I think that obviously, I don't know if that's going to happen going forward, but if you're able to move it earlier in the day here, you're able to get a much broader worldwide audience. You're able to pick up that 9 o'clock Eastern time slot. Folks on the West Coast may not be as excited about it, but West Coast of the States, obviously, may not be as excited about it, but it does open up a whole variety of markets, like in the Far East. And it certainly makes for an interesting new set of bidders for our rights. So we'll see. I think that there is definitely, whether there is a full migration or not, to be determined, but certainly my guess is OTT is here to stay, almost certainly. The incredible viewing experience, even that MLB TV is. I consume all of my American sports off of Watch ESPN here in London. It's the way of the world. The most fulfilling aspect of my job, it's sort of the wild, wild west out here for the NFL. It is an incredibly cosmopolitan city, with it's easily the most diverse city I've ever lived in and ever been to. And I've had the good fortune of traveling to a few different cities in the world, and this is just an incredible place. But that also means that you're drowned out by a lot of different things, and so you have to make sure that your offerings are compelling enough that you can cut through the clutter. And there's a ton of clutter. There's a ton of people. It almost feels like, if you're in certain areas of London where the vast majority of the people you're walking past are not native to this city and not native to this country. It's a really incredibly diverse group of people, and none of whom would have any reason to engage with American football. So there's a really cool opportunity to have people embrace a completely different sport, and it's a really daunting task to be able to have to sell into a sport that not a lot of people are familiar with, and in a culture where soccer is just such an incredible juggernaut. It's shocking. It is shocking to see how pervasive soccer is here. You don't really appreciate it until you're sort of an expat looking to find something other than darts, soccer, and cricket. And you're like, oh my God, everything is soccer, some derivative of soccer, some like classic game of soccer, some analysis of soccer. It's like, holy cow, this is really shocking. And you realize how difficult it is to penetrate that, but there's also some pretty interesting, I hope, compelling bits of differentiation that we can offer the marketplace. I was part of a panel a while back that I found really pretty compelling. I had It was actually, I wish I could take credit for it because it was an interesting set of questions, but it was one of the fellow panelists that did this. She asked the audience, it was a career panel on sports, and she had asked the audience members to raise their hand and ask them who wanted to be involved in sports. And unsurprisingly, everybody raised their hand. And so she started asking random people throughout, to hold up, keep their hand up. Why do you want to be part of sports? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to be involved? And almost to a person, they started talking about why they were such great fans of the sport and why they're so passionate about sports and how they would be really, it would be an incredible experience and all this kind of stuff. And she made an observation which has stuck with me to this day, and this is why I find it important for people to grasp and people it resonated with me. That sort of completely misses the point when you want to work in sports. Sports is like any other business. They are looking to make a profit. They're looking to grow their brand. They're looking to improve their customer experience, and they're looking to make lifetime sort of engagement propositions with their customers. If you can't add value to a company around that concept or any of those concepts, then being a fan of a team, there are thousands and thousands of thousands of people, millions sometimes, if you're lucky enough as a sports franchise, who engage with your brand every season. None of that suggests that they're qualified to add any value to your organization from a corporate perspective or from a front office perspective. Just being a fan is insufficient. You need to be able to think about what you do as adding value to your organization. So if that means being the best accountant out there, being the best marketer out there, being the best strategy person out there, whatever it is, think about why you would add value to a business. And if you can't add value to a business, then you're gonna have a very difficult time making a particularly compelling pitch for anybody to hire you. Yeah, Cornell. I certainly missed the hockey. There's been some lean years. It hasn't been till really this year that I've although this past weekend wasn't one to write home about. As you can tell, I still follow pretty closely. I miss Cornell hockey very dearly, very, very dearly. But the campus has changed a lot since I've been there. It's been a while, but what you guys know as College Town right now is not what I knew College Town to be. And with all due respect, College Town has lost a lot of its culture and its sort of uniqueness because it used to be a really special place. But you know what? I missed East Hill. I miss walking the campus when the college returning. I miss my friends. I mean, there's just a lot of things about Cornell that you don't appreciate until you leave, and you're too damn old to turn back the hands of time, unfortunately. There's one thing that I would say that you got to do is, take the time to smell the roses a little bit. It's hard. It's hard at your age. It's hard at your sort of lifestyle to do that because you don't have an appreciation for it. But it's an incredible place. It's a beautiful place, and you take that under consideration. There's an architecture class. I forget that. It was like Architecture 101. It was a total class. It was one of the things I had to take because I had to fulfill something I think in the arts college out of ILR. But take it. It's a really good class, and there's some incredible architecture at Cornell, and it's a great way of sort of getting to know a different part of the campus and see the campus through a different lens. Yeah, I do miss Cornell hockey a lot. Now I also miss pizza at the Nines as I think about it. I don't know if the Nines is still there. It was there a few years ago, but seeing that tray come down off the pole, off the pulley system, and listening to some good live music, I miss the Nines. So CornellHockeyFan@gmail.com is my email address. Feel free to reach me by email. I'm notoriously bad at email, so be persistent. Don't take any offense. It's not me being. I'm not trying to big time you. I'm just lazy. So that's really the only reason why, and I'll do my best. And if we need to do this again, hopefully I'll figure out the muting issue. But if it makes some sense to do it again in whether it's smaller group or otherwise, I'm happy to do it.